Well, there's Huskers going into the portal. There's Huskers coming out of the portal. And there's a mailbag. Is college football fatigue a real thing? We discuss next.
You are Locked On Nebraska, your daily Nebraska Cornhuskers podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Thank you for making Locked On Nebraska your first listen every day. We are free and available wherever you get your podcasts and on YouTube, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. And today's episode is brought to you by GameTime. Download the GameTime app, create an account, and use the code LOCKEDONCollege for $20 off your first purchase.
Okay, welcome in. It is Thursday. I'm Mitch Sherman from The Athletic. Connor Happer of 1620. The Zone is here with me. More going on in the portal on Wednesday. Guess who's back? Keona Davis is back for Nebraska. We just got done talking about how Keona Davis went into the portal. That was Tuesday. So, okay, it's a big boost to the defense. This is a guy who's going to do a lot of damage in his career as a pass rusher in college football. I think we've established that. Gone to the portal on Wednesday for Nebraska. Offensive lineman Jacob Hood, wide receiver Isaiah McMorris, tight end Nate Borkershire. So all three of those present a little bit something different. Connor, Jacob Hood, was never really a factor. Injuries. McMorris is now the third of three Bellevue West signees from a year ago to go into the portal, joining Danny Kalen and Davon Hall. And then Borkershire was set to be a returning starter at tight end with 1 year left of eligibility. So all different cases there. Not sure, especially on the last one, is a bit puzzling.
Yeah, I was going to ask you about that. I mean, seeing the news, on Wednesday afternoon, it was sort of surprising, but we shouldn't probably be surprised by anything.
That's the thing.
I was thinking today, because I've seen it a lot, and it wasn't just Keona Davis, and it wasn't just Emmett Johnson. Like, how many guys are going into and out of the portal in this short span of time? Like, we've seen this now in the portal era, where guys go into the portal and then they come out after several weeks of surveying their options. Now it seems to be a trend where guys are going into the portal or announcing their intention to go into the portal and then coming out within a 24 to 48 hour span.
Why do you think that is?
Well, I hate to put a blanket over everybody, but there's probably some money and leverage involved in those situations.
Yeah. So you can go in, and I'm not saying that Emmett Johnson or Keona Davis did this, but you can go in, quickly make it known that you're very serious about transferring. If you had been having conversations with your school's collective and maybe they thought you were bluffing, all you have to do is go in the portal, fill out that paperwork, and then they know you're serious. And then maybe you get a 6-figure bonus. It calls into question, I think, some of what we're doing in the media and whether it's the right thing to do to just blast out the news about everyone who goes into the portal if we're just playing into the hands of someone who's trying to get a raise.
Great point.
Can't really do that in the NFL. I mean, you can hold out, but it's not like you can hold out and then just land with another team. And there's not really a vehicle for coaches to necessarily do this when they're locked into contracts. All of it is just kind of stinky, and it's probably going to have to change in years ahead. You can go in the portal literally for 24 hours and come out with a Lamborghini, and no worse for the wear.
Yeah. Like players in the NFL or in professional sports can use, they can use the media, they can use their agents to try and set narratives in whichever way they want to go and stuff like that. So it's not like totally foreign, or anything like that. But it's an interesting sort of way to frame it up too, because I don't know, there's probably going to be a study done after this cycle. How many guys, went in period of time? The number is going to be staggering of how many guys went into the portal.
Yes.
But I think how many guys came out and went back to their original locations is going to be pretty surprising too.
Yeah, it is more of a trend, I think, and for pure reasons, because you might go in and then not get the kind of scholarship offers or roster spot offers that you would expect. And if that's the case, and the doors open at your former school, the thing that can change that trend, if someone's just looking to renegotiate their deal, is for schools to take a hardline stance on saying, okay, once you're in the portal, you're in the portal. And
Dangerous
sorry
game.
if you're a 4-star or you're a returning starter, we're not going to be used in this way. So don't go in if you're planning to come out and come back to the same school. But Nebraska and most schools don't have the luxury to do that when it's an Emmett Johnson or a Keona Davis. So we're kind of stuck in this in-between area where plenty of players who go into the portal cannot talk their way back onto a roster, but some can. And those are the ones that I think you kind of have to watch as we go forward and see what the trends say. So Nebraska is starting to, speaking of the portal, is starting to bring in visitors. And now we have some names and some positions, and various reporting on Wednesday tells us that Nebraska has an offensive lineman coming in from Michigan. Nebraska has a defensive end coming in from Central Michigan. Omar Graham, a linebacker from Florida State, is coming in to Lincoln on a visit. You have a long snapper from New Hampshire coming in on a visit. So these are all areas that we identified when we talked on Wednesday about areas of need. The one that made me perk my eyes up a bit, Jack McAllister, the punter from Washington, is coming in on a visit. This is not the long-lost son of Kate and Peter McAllister, brother to Kevin and Buzz McAllister, as we stay in the holiday season. No, Jack McAllister is a real punter, and he averaged 44 yards a punt last year, and he's coming in to take a look at the Huskers.
Nebraska needs to pull a trick like the Sticky Bandits did, and maybe like hit him with a big jug of paint or something, and make sure he never make sure he never leaves. I don't know, something like that. Punter.
We talked about the portal, so let's get to some mailbag questions. We'll do a couple before the first break. Thank you, everybody, for the questions that we got. Even now into this quieter time of football playing, we still got plenty of questions. So we're very appreciative of that. Even had a shout out on Twitter on Wednesday night asking for more questions, and you all came through. So thank you. This question came in a few days ago from Matt on email, and he's wondering about college football fatigue. He said, do you guys have college football fatigue or worry about college football fatigue like I do? He says it's at an all-time high right now. What's going on? Just the energy and the buzz and the talk around college football. So one would question his judgment about fatigue, but he's having a hard time keeping up. He says, this is before Emmett Johnson came out of the portal. He says, the Emmett Johnson news back on December 5th really struck me because you get attached to players and then, they're gone. So, well, maybe they're not gone. Do we have to become NBA fans where we follow our favorite players and don't actually have teams, and then that fatigue just develops into apathy? This is like a therapy session for Matt. He says, with the portal, NIL, revenue sharing, conference realignment, there's a lot to keep up with. I'm not all doom and gloom. I'm glad players have more flexibility with transferring and the opportunity to make money, but does Pandora's box need to be closed?
The hope is that things normalize, over the coming years. But yeah, I mean, it's the wild, wild west right now. I mean, you want to know why Bill Belichick's in college football? because
there are no rules.
Yeah, because he feels like he can do anything he wants. He just made North Carolina reportedly go from $4 million NIL war chest to $20 million war chest. I mean,
where'd that money come from?
Right? Who knows? It's fake money. I have no idea. So I totally understand it. Like I get where Matt's coming from in that, but the hope is that it sort of normalizes. And yeah, in football, it's a sport where, even in the NFL, you still root for the jersey, right? You don't root for the player. You root for the colors and the team that you followed, regardless of who's there. It's not like the NBA where you're just going to follow your favorite quarterback wherever, it's not going to be like that. I wouldn't recommend that. That wouldn't be fun. It's still a regional game because there's so many small college towns and conferences and stuff like that, even though that's less regional. So like we're in this, it feels like we're in this really big picture in between zone where what college football used to be and what it's going to be. And, I hope that we get to what it's going to be soon, because this is a weird spot we're in.
Yeah, I agree. All right, let's get to one more before we take a break. This is from Nebraska Ball Nut, also known as Justin on X. He asks, with Phil Snow coming in as associate head coach, do you think that Rhule is positioning Snow to become the general manager? And he says, yes, I know Sean Padden is already the general manager. I think no. I do not think that that's the plan for 68-year-old Phil Snow at all.
No, I think it's something closer to defensive, coordinator. Like I don't know what that like would look like. Yeah, defensive head coach, defensive boss, whatever that might be, defensive overseer. Like I think that's the protection that Phil Snow would give you on the staff. That's the reason why he's here. That's part of the reason why Tony White's not here. I mean, so like I think it's probably more of that rather than personnel acquisition and identification.
Yeah, the GM job is something totally different, and it requires somebody who has a background in business and management, not necessarily coaching. I don't think you'll see GMs come out of the coaching world. I mean, I could see somebody like Matt Rhule eventually being a college football GM, but he's got kind of that acumen to him. Whereas Phil Snow spent 25 years as a defensive coordinator. Like he wants to get in the room and talk defense and coach defense and give advice on that kind of stuff, how to make adjustments, whatever. Be a mentor for John Butler as he gets as he dives into this role as Nebraska defensive coordinator. So good thought, but no, I don't think he's being positioned to be a general manager. All right, when we come back, question for us that I think puts some of the transfer portal talk into the proper perspective. That is next after the break. All right, Locked On Nebraska listeners, basketball season is here, and I want to tell you about GameTime. It makes getting tickets to basketball games much easier. You want to see a Big Ten game in person? How about a Big East game, if that's your thing? GameTime can get you into the arena. It offers tickets for games, concerts, shows, not just sports. Check out the feature on the GameTime app called GameTime Picks. It filters out the fluff to show you only the incredible deals on great seats, so you don't have to waste your time searching through thousands of options. Nebraska on Friday has got Indiana coming into Pinnacle Bank Arena. Maybe you want to make plans to see an NBA game this holiday season. GameTime allows you to customize your spot in the arena. I love that you can get curated deals to make it easier to find the best price on the best seats. GameTime provides seat views before you buy. They've got the super deal, which is a unique feature that you need to check out. You can get event cancellation protection. There's job loss protection. It's all there. There's always that lowest price guarantee. So take the guesswork out of buying tickets with GameTime. Download the app, create an account, use the code LOCKEDONCollege for $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. Again, download the GameTime app today. What time is it? Game time.
All right, welcome back. Connor Happer, Mitch Sherman with you. Tomorrow, Friday, on the podcast, we'll have a little bit of a crossover episode, talk some Boston College with our Locked On counterpart out there. So look forward to that in your feeds. You were just to bring the read to life here, the Game Time. So the Knicks are always at home on Christmas.
Mm-hmm. If Nebraska fans are in New York a couple days early, get to MSG. Huh.
Mm-hmm. You might have to. Yeah, you might want to look at Game Time, honestly, for tickets to that.
Get to MSG and go see your favorite players, even if you don't follow teams.
Exactly.
We'll have to check later and see who the Knicks are playing. Maybe there's some player on a roster that people are fans of.
It's the Spurs. You could see Wemby.
Oh man, if only I was going a day earlier.
There you go. So if you're out there the whole week, you might want to check that out. All right, back into the questions here. We got
Rhule might be there. He's going to be the man of the city during Nebraska's stay in New York.
Yeah. Here's from Shadiest Acon on Twitter. Who do you see as the top 3 transfers of the portal era? So is this person talking about who have come to Nebraska?
That's how I read it, yeah. And I did a little research on this.
Okay, interesting. All right, so here's some names that come off my head, top of my head first. Trey Palmer.
Number 1 answer.
Yeah. Samari Toure.
Number 2 answer.
Who would be the third?
I'll give you a few to choose from.
Okay.
Ben Scott.
Yeah, good one.
Tommy Hill.
Yeah.
Casey Thompson. Darian Daniels. Omar Brown. MJ Sherman. Billy Kemp. Sierra Wright. I think that's probably a good place to stop.
Yeah. That's an interesting group of names. Casey Thompson has a probably interesting case, even though it was just a 1 year, but that's a quarterback. I guess
they needed him.
Tanner Lee was the portal era, but he was a transfer quarterback. So if you wanted to include him,
the portal came into effect in October of 2018. So this is 2019 moving forward. Yeah, I mean, there's been some good players, but I think the thing to really note from that is you're not talking about a bunch other than Trey Palmer. Samari Toure had a great season.
How about Dante Dowdell?
Yeah, he's on my list too. I should have mentioned him. 1 year, ran for 500 yards. I think when you look at him too, there's a future there that is exciting. He was a sophomore last season. Thank you, Oregon, for using that year of eligibility in 2023. So he has 2 years of eligibility left. By 2 years from now, he might be at the top of this list.
Yeah. Okay. So sorry. Finish your thought there.
There are not a lot of like guys that you would say were all Big Ten type players, other than those couple receivers that we mentioned there, Palmer and Toure, who used Nebraska to go to the NFL. So I think that's something that needs to be kept in perspective, and it kind of puts the portal in perspective, because every time the portal opens and Nebraska starts doing what it's doing right now and bringing in visitors, they all seem like future all Big Ten candidates. There's not that high of a hit rate. Like, as I went through this list, I kind of raised my eyebrows at a lot of the names that you didn't hear me just read. Like, those were all effective players for Nebraska. There were many more who are not in that category. And you have to accept the fact that when you go portal hunting and you try to find 15 players, if you can go 50%, if you can hit 500, you're doing really well. So it's a tough evaluation process because it happens so fast. And then, of course, you have to remember that all of these guys are in the portal for a reason. Something didn't work out at their previous school.
I will say, though, right now, it feels as if the need is maybe stronger for like really, really good, like, starter caliber players right now. So that's something to keep in mind when Nebraska goes
and
after.
So maybe the incentive to find them will be higher, and the price that Nebraska is willing to pay, which is partly what it's about, will be higher.
Yeah. Here is a email from Maggie. Do you know the of Demetrius Bell? He seemed to be having a good spring before his injury in the spring game. I feel like he'd be a good fit in Dana Holgerson's offense.
Yeah, he was having a good spring, and Nebraska loved Demetrius Bell during his redshirt season in 2023. One of the best players on the roster as far as the way that he practiced. But he was off the map and I don't mean he was part of the program, but he was away from action, out for the season as soon as that injury occurred in the spring game. That was right after you remember how that happened? It was right after the kickoff return where Ja'Cory Barney got tackled by the kicker. And so it never even should have been an offensive series. And they threw to Rella, threw to Demetrius Bell in the corner, the southwest corner of the end zone, and Matt Rhule was up in the in the box at that moment doing work with BTN, talking to BTN, and Demetrius went, already had sat out a year. It was it was the dark moment of the spring game for sure. Blyhill went down very shortly thereafter, and he was able to come back and play this year, but not really at the level that he showed in the spring. We'll see on Demetrius Bell exactly how he bounces back from that thing, and there's no indication at this point that he's going anywhere from Nebraska, but they had to move on without him. So it's a tough deal. And with the 105, it's even tougher.
Here's Terry. What's up with Maverick Noonan? Yeah,
speaking of players who got injured, and Noonan got hurt in preseason camp before his true freshman year. I believe that was August of 2023, after having a good spring as an early enrollee that year. And he's been working his way back since then. He played in several games this year. I think there'll be an opportunity for him in 2025. The son of Danny Noonan, big time recruit out of Elkhorn South High School in Omaha. I think that being a full year plus off of the injury that he had, there will be a chance for him to make a difference with as part of a young roster in this next season, playing for Phil Simpson.
All right, let's get through a couple more here. Richard from Twitter, if the 105 roster limit was enacted prior to this year, 2024, would Indiana have been able to do what it did?
Yes.
Yeah.
Indiana
got a huge roster.
100 players. 100 players on the Indiana roster. Indiana is not affected by the 105-man roster, other than, and this is the opposite in Nebraska. This conversation that we have been having for weeks about the 105 at Nebraska. It doesn't exist in Bloomington, Indiana. In fact, they're having a completely different conversation about how they want to divide their revenue share among 100 players instead of scholarships among 85. Do you still have 5 to 10 walk-ons? But no, Indiana doesn't have to cut anybody. Just keep on going the way Signetti drew it up when he got to town a year ago.
Which leads into our final question of the segment here from John. It's an interesting one. Who decides how Nebraska divides the revenue sharing next year? Is it the head coach? I've heard Rhule talk about how he doesn't get involved in NIL negotiations, though I'm sure he and other coaches make known who their priority targets are. Will revenue sharing be any different?
Ooh, that's a tough one. I think the general manager, although the general manager is Sean Padden, has been, he's definitely a personnel guy. He has a lot of dealings with the coaching staff. I don't really know how they're going to divide that up. If you have to bring somebody else in to be like the salary cap administrator to have a pro sport comparison to it, Nebraska is going to be able to allocate about $14 million toward football revenue sharing. It's not going to be evenly divided among all 100 players or so who are. They're still going to have a few walk-ons. I don't know that 105 players will receive a cut of the rev share. They want to still have an opportunity for a few true walk-ons on this roster. Maybe it's 95 who are earning rev share money, but the starting left tackle, the lockdown corner, your middle linebacker, your left tackle, your quarterback, your starting running back, just like in the NFL, those guys are going to be the highest paid players on the roster. I don't know exactly how they're going to go about dividing that up. I would think that the head coach, this is different from NIL, where he's not allowed technically to direct those payments. This is in-house. Like, if he wants to decide and the school says you can decide, Matt Rhule, then he can decide. I'm just not sure if that's something that works right for the head coach, the person who's coaching these players, to also decide how much they get paid.
Yeah, we should continue on with that discussion and see if we have any more questions to round out the show. But we have a few more minutes, and we'll be back on the other side after this. All right. Get ready to tackle the NFL action this weekend with FanDuel, America's #1 sportsbook. Right now, new customers can bet $5 and get $150 in bonus bets if you win. FanDuel, the FanDuel Sportsbook app gives you everything you need. You can place live bets on the NFL, of course, futures as well. If you feel like you have a hunch on who might make the Super Bowl, who might win the Super Bowl, that you can place those bets with the FanDuel Sportsbook. Head to FanDuel.com and join today. And you find that you get that hunch in the middle of the game. You could check out anything you need on the app. It's very convenient. It is there for you. And once again, new customers, you'll get started with $150 in bonus bets if you win your first $5 bet. Head to FanDuel.com today. That's FanDuel, America's #1 sports book.
All right, welcome back to the Locked On Nebraska podcast on this Thursday mailbag show, mailbag and potpourri of other topics. I'm Mitch Sherman from The Athletic. Connor Happer of 1620 The Zone is with me. Connor, we're going to get Matt Rhule, or whoever is left in Lincoln in town is going to get to hear from Matt Rhule, perhaps an assistant coach and 2 to 3 players this morning, Thursday morning in Lincoln after the Huskers practice. I will not be there. I'm going to be checking out for a couple of days, pre-planned little getaway. So they're going to have to go on without me. I'll be back Sunday, and I will plan to be at the Devaney Center on Sunday, hoping to see round 3 of Nebraska-Wisconsin volleyball here in the 2024 season. Huskers and Badgers are the headliners of the Lincoln Regional, which starts play in the Sweet 16 round on Friday. Nebraska's taking on Dayton, and the Wisconsin is going to play Texas A&M. The Trev Alberts-led Texas A&M Aggies are coming in to
Can't shake him
to the Devaney Center. Assuming that Nebraska and Wisconsin win, they would be heavy favorites to win those regional semifinals. They'll be competing for a spot in the Final Four. I have a story out on Thursday about that Nebraska-Wisconsin rivalry and how they have taken college volleyball to a new level. Really started with their 2021 national championship match in Columbus, Ohio, that was attended by almost 19,000 people, which is a record for college volleyball in anywhere. And it's just continued on. These two teams have both played for the national championship 3 times in the last 7 years. So both have made 3 appearances in the last 7 years. Nebraska's 0-3 in those 3 appearances. Last won a championship in 16. It was around that time. Yeah. 5 championships Nebraska has won. Looking for a 6th next week. The Final Four starts on Thursday in Louisville.
Well, and the Nebraska volleyball brand is so big, and Wisconsin obviously has a part in that too. So much so that, Nebraska gets the no matter what, the Lincoln Regional Final is going to be broadcast on ABC on Sunday. So
that's something else. Yeah.
That creates a bit of a logjam for Nebraska on campus on Sunday with all these different things going on, and Friday does too. So Friday there's a men's basketball game, a big one on Big Fox, with Indiana, and then you have that game against Dayton in volleyball. I believe there's a Lincoln Stars game going on at the same time as well.
Volleyball. Wow.
Yeah. Okay. So get ready to park aggressively.
That's not good.
Yeah. And then Sunday there's a women's basketball game at noon at Pinnacle Bank Arena, and they're playing Chattanooga, and then the volleyball game starts at 2. So a lot of stuff going on this weekend for sure.
That's a lot. We were discussing on Wednesday about whether 2 major television networks have ever broadcast live sports from the Nebraska campus at the same time when it didn't involve football. And that's going to be going on a little bit under the radar that this Friday night game is on Big Fox, Nebraska, Indiana at PBA. Maybe the 40-point loss at Michigan State took a little bit of the steam out of the Nebraska men's basketball movement early this season. Had the big win against Creighton, and hey, Indiana's a big game. Huskers want to start the Big Ten season 1-1.
Yeah, it's definitely big. It's a huge game. Nebraska basketball needs to they need to get that taste out of their mouth from what happened last weekend against Michigan State. So that's a really big deal, and it's a big weekend for the campus. So I think people feel like this is the I don't know. This feels like it all is kind of lining up for Nebraska volleyball a little bit. They still have, and they've kind of gotten over the Wisconsin hump a little bit, and they're maybe not quite as fierce as they have been, but it's obviously still a challenge and a huge brand. But I don't know. It feels like they were sort of destined to end up in the Final Four and take it all the way home. So we'll see.
I wouldn't get too far down the road. I in this article today and in writing about some of the regionals, I talked to Emily Eman from the Big Ten Network and ESPN, one of the true authorities on the sport of volleyball in the media in America. And I asked her, is there a team out there that if they're playing at their best, you see as a prohibitive favorite in this tournament? And, I kind of thought I might hear the answer. Yeah, Nebraska, there's All-Americans all over the court. And she said, yes, there is. And it's not Nebraska, it's Pitt. So Nebraska swept Pitt in the Final Four last year in the semifinals, but this is apparently a different animal that everyone's dealing with nationally. If Pitt, which has been ranked number 1 all year, gets to the Final Four. Olivia Babcock for Pitt is probably the national player of the year. She's a sophomore opposite hitter who Emily told me is reminiscent of some of the great Olympians who are currently playing volleyball and that we saw in Paris this year. So she rattled off some names that sounded familiar to me from watching some volleyball on TV back in August. So even if the Huskers get past Wisconsin on Sunday, don't go counting this as another national championship for John Cook until they win twice in Louisville.
Well, and there's big games out there. These are nationally known brands now. The players on the volleyball scene, which is really cool. And I think it speaks to, Nebraska always sort of being a part of that. I'm excited to see what happens in Happy Valley. There's
Creighton, Texas.
There's Texas. Friday. There's Creighton. and then there's Penn State. The whole thing. I'm curious to see we get the Final Four, but it definitely looks like big brand central. That's for sure. So a lot of heavyweights.
Yeah. One thing we got on Wednesday that we should discuss before the end of the show is a Big Ten football schedule for 2025. So we had the opponents. We knew that Nebraska was going to go to Penn State. We knew Nebraska was going to go to UCLA. We knew that Michigan was going to come to Memorial Stadium in 2025, but we didn't know the order and how this was going to match up. And as we saw in 2024, that can really make a difference. Nebraska's schedule was backloaded, and when the schedule came out more than a year ago, it was, the Huskers better get to 6 wins in their first 7 games, or it's going to be tough sledding to make it to bowl eligibility. And look what happened. They went 5-1, and then they lost 5 of their last 6 and scraped into a bowl game with the win against Wisconsin. So 2025 is a different looking schedule. I feel like it's very reasonable when you consider who the opponents are. It's not front loaded. It's not back loaded. It's just all very nicely put together for the Huskers. You agree?
Yeah. Neutral site game to start, which is likely going to be in Kansas City against Cincinnati. And then 4 straight home games, after that, including a bye after you have your Big Ten opener with Michigan. So that's a big deal. Nebraska doesn't go on the road till the second week of October. And then you go to Maryland. So it's not like there's one half of the schedule and then there's another half of the schedule. Yeah. It's pretty spread out, and there's obviously some challenges. Nebraska goes to Penn State in late November. That's, it had to be that way, of course. Iowa at the end of the season is always hard. USC and UCLA. It's difficult, as it always is going to be in the Big Ten, but it's not unbearable.
Michigan may have a true freshman quarterback in 2025. And so if you're going to play them in the Big Ten opener at your house. That's favorable. That's the best place you could have seen Michigan on the Nebraska schedule for next season. Then I just had a bye at Michigan or Michigan State at home. Those first 2 Big Ten road games are Maryland and Minnesota, which is not like going into Happy Valley. You kind of get to rev up. You get the Rose Bowl in early November again, which is a treat for Nebraska fans like we saw this year to go out to Southern California when the weather starts to get cold at home. And then there's a bye before you have to go to Penn State. So, and then you finish on a short week, but it's at home against Iowa. So this is as people joked on social media when the list came out, okay, they should. I see them being 10-0 going into Happy Valley in November.
Yeah, it's we always do that. That's a win. That's a win. That's a win. Hardly ever turns out especially in the portal era. Like you don't know who these guys quarterback.
We don't know who's going to be on the team.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
So
the Nebraska team. We don't know who's going to be on the Nebraska team.
Yeah, but it looks from a brand perspective, relatively manageable. Okay, that is it for us. That's it for Mitch this week. And once again, we'll have some Boston College stuff coming your way on the feed on Friday. So be on the lookout for that. Appreciate you guys making Locked On Nebraska your first listen today. For your second listen, you can check out the Locked On Big Ten podcast. Find Locked On Big Ten on YouTube or wherever you get your podcasts.